Good morning, Texhoma, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ashley Fitzwater, and this morning we are taking you inside News Channel 6 only on 6 stories. We're actually taking behind the scenes, sitting down with the reporters who spend so much time putting the stories together that really matter most to you. And joining me now with our first story this morning is Christina Myers. Christina, you actually did a story on minor crime, major impact, and you had a chance to chat with the Wichita Falls Police Department. And really, some good news for Texhoma because theft, burglaries, and robberies are on the decline, you found. So what we want to know this morning is really, and what you looked into, is what affected that?
Well, interestingly enough, it's when Chief Manuel Borrego took over in 2012, he switched to the department to what's called intel-based policing. And it's pretty interesting. They have someone come in and actually briefs them on the numbers every 2 weeks on what crimes happen in what areas, and really it's an analytical look. So taking the numbers and really just making them just that, just the numbers, and comparing from years past and weeks past and months past. And that way they can determine where they need more manpower, where they need more resources, maybe where they need less. And so that's kind of how they can determine using those numbers.
So the best place to put those officers out on the street from looking at those charts. You know, you also chatted, though, with the public. You took these numbers to them, and you're going to hear, of course, if you missed it the first time, her story. We're going to air that for you in a minute. But, you know, the response,
I know, yeah, you know, most Texhomans I spoke with said that they did not notice a decline, and actually even a couple said, you know, I think they're on the rise. And I think it is tough for people to see kind of the work that police do, and even when you hear about crimes at all, you just hear crime. You don't hear, well, there's less than this year. That's why it was very interesting, again, to see those numbers just black and white.
Christina is always seems to be our reporter that goes digging through those numbers for you and spending so much
time.
And you did that again this time. Yes. No surprise here. That's what she's good at. So, but what you did, you looked through the numbers. You compared last year, of course, to this year when it came to these things. Were there any surprises?
Well, you know, really the only minor crime that did not decrease and actually saw a little bit of an uptick was anything having to do with motor vehicles. So thefts or burglaries of a motor vehicle. And actually News Channel 6, we did, once the police department released those specific numbers, we did another story because the interesting part about that is that most of those crimes are actually the most preventable. Yeah. So there are steps that you can take to make sure that your car is not stolen or not burglarized. So we have those at newschannel6now.com.
Absolutely. And one of the simple things, lock your doors. Yes. You know, a lot of people leave them unlocked. Makes it easy for the criminals to reach in there and grab that purse or hide things. If you're going to be at the store, stick it in the trunk,
Exactly. Right? And you know, another thing that Sergeant Spraggins pointed out to me is that it's kind of frustrating for officers when they do have to go to these calls that were preventable, you know, especially when they would like to be able to focus their power on other things that maybe impact the community more.
Absolutely. And of course reduce these so people do recognize those maybe. So, well, Christina, again, we appreciate the insight this morning, and it's always interesting, I think, getting the reporter's view of their story and doing all that work. So in case you missed it the first time, or hey, we're just going to take another look at minor crime, major impact.
The numbers are in, and the amount of minor crimes in Wichita Falls is on the decline.
You know, I'd like to say it's 100% the police department has been out there. But, you know, if you look at the crime rate, it really is affected by so many different things.
Public Information Officer for the WFPD, Sergeant John Spraggins, says new administration has a lot to do with it. Chief Manuel Borrego, who took over in October 2012, switched the department to intel-based policing.
We're trying to attack crime and the crime rate in a different manner, and it's been showing some successes.
Intel-based policing relies on the numbers to better attack crimes. WFPD leaders are briefed every 2 weeks on what crimes happened in which areas of town, and that helps determine where to put their manpower and resources. New technology has also had a hand in bringing down the crime rate. Each police vehicle now has a computer, allowing officers to send reports almost instantly.
5 years ago, we didn't have computers in the cars. We didn't have our reports were handwritten. So the availability of the information, although the information may have been there in the past, but how quickly it's available now is really helped.
Still, not all Texhomans have noticed the decline in minor crimes in Wichita Falls.
No, sir. Not that I've noticed.
No, I think they're on the increase, really.
Sergeant Spraggin says for the numbers to keep going down, it will take more than just the police department.
We alone cannot make the difference. It takes everyone involved, and that's our city leaders, our businesses, our citizens, everyone.
Welcome back to Inside Texoma. Once again, this morning we are taking a look at stories you will only see on News Channel 6. Joining me now with an inside look at her story is Tanya De Jesus. And Tanya, your focus was on farmers market inspection, and this was very interesting because when you think of the farmers market, of course, you think of all the yummy fruits and veggies, all that produce out there that you can go get. But the question that you asked is, how do we really know it's safe? So how do we know it's safe, Tanya?
Well, it was very interesting, actually. I actually got to go with an inspector of the Wichita County Public Health District, and it's not what you think. You would normally think they just go out there and just look if the fruit or vegetable is rotten, but it's a very complicated process. I got to follow one of the inspectors, like I said, and first of all, one of the things that really caught me off guard is that these vendors need a food handler's card. It's basically saying that they do know what they need to have or need to do to prepare the food if they're cutting or serving samples right there at the farmer's market. Many of the vendors didn't have that. Of course, they didn't need that at that point because they weren't necessarily serving samples that day, but they absolutely need it if they're planning on doing it. So that was one of the biggest violations that we found the day I followed the inspector. So that was surprising.
Were any of the vendors surprised, or were they caught off guard? Because, I mean, you would think they would know there is someone out there inspecting what they're doing.
They were, and even though they know inspectors will stop by every month, they don't necessarily know exactly what day. So I think especially having the cameras there made some of the vendors a little nervous. They quickly wanted to make sure if they had their food vendor's card and that everything looked good for the inspector, but all of them were great. All of them said, they want this information out there because they want to make sure that Texomas know that the food, it is safe.
Absolutely, an encouragement to go out there and actually shop and buy your produce. Now, the thing is, though, and I think this is very interesting, it's not always going to be around, though, correct?
That's correct. A bill passed that actually the health district won't have as much say in what inspectors will be able to enforce at the farmers market, and that is making health officials in Texoma a little nervous. Now at farmers market, not only will you be able to find vegetables and fruits like you always do, but now vendors will be able to sell anything they can grow in their farm. That includes meat, chicken, and the fact that now the health district won't be able to necessarily have a lot to say in those inspections, well, that creates some concerns.
Absolutely. And you did another report, which again, we're not going to show today, but we want to let you know it's online, newschannel6now.com, about what those changes, what that means for our area, what health inspectors have to say about it, because it all kicks in again in September. So if you'd like to take a look at that, you can head to newschannel6now.com. But first, we want to give you another look at the story that she did, Farmers Market Inspection.
While Texoma fruit and veggie lovers are busy scoping the area for the best local produce, Brian Railsback is looking beyond what's on the tables of vendors at the Wichita Falls Farmers Market. And he only has one thing in mind, and that's your health.
Make sure nothing's spoiled or rotten. If we see anything like that, we ask them to discard it. And then we just kind of go on and see what their processes are.
Selling rotten food is just one of a laundry list of rules that Railsback needs to make sure vendors are not violating. So he jumps right into his first order of business.
How you doing? Hey, do y'all have a food handler's card?
Bev does. I do.
Okay. Can I see that? Do you have it with you right now?
It's right here.
Railsback says at least one person at the stand needs a food handler's card if they're planning on cutting or preparing food. In fact, not having that card is the biggest violation vendors commit. So another vendor gets put on the spot.
Any of y'all have a food handler's card?
Vendor Diana Ederholt quickly searches for the card in her wallet, only to find out
that I didn't have my food handler's card on me.
Were you nervous at that point?
A little bit.
this time around, Railsback won't issue a citation because she wasn't serving samples, but he still gives a suggestion.
I'll be back next week and we'll check. Just make sure you find it. If not, contact the health department.
The handler's card proves vendors have taken food safety courses and know what they need to do and need to have to prepare samples.
What I've been making them do is wear gloves and a hat.
Yeah.
And then we have like a cupboard
For the samples?
right, for the
Okay,
samples.
perfect.
So is
And this,
that all we need to do?
they like you to have a disposable cutting board.
Vendors also need to keep anything that needs to be cooled at 41 degrees or below.
We just want to make sure people are doing it sanitary. They're washing their hands. They're sanitizing utensils, so the transmission of diseases is not going from the person selling the food to the person buying the food.
Inspectors also take a very close look at canned goods. In fact, it's the only item on the table that requires a label. In there, farmers should write their address, the date when it was canned, and a telephone number.
The same thing goes for baked goods. And Railsback noticed one of the vendors missed one of the requirements.
Part of the labeling laws is we need to know where it was canned. So if you could put an address, and everything else looks great.
Again, he decides just to give the vendor a verbal warning because it was a minor detail.
We always look at how critical is it. Is something that can make somebody really sick. We can always stop them from doing what they're doing and tell them they can't sell no more until we get everything corrected.
If he decides to write up a fine, it could be for $350 or more. Tanya de Jesus, News Channel 6.
Welcome back to Inside Texoma. Once again, we are taking an inside look at stories you will only see on News Channel 6. And our very own Chris Horgan joins us now, and he took a look at drowning investments. And Chris, this was an important story because a lot of citizens are upset. The city owns two entities here they recently bought, and they just rely on a lot of water. Castaway Cove, and of course, Weeks Park Champions Golf Course. So you took a look at really how they're going to keep these going whenever we're in the middle of a drought, which was a lot of people's concern.
It really was. You know, they spent a lot of money to buy Castaway Cove in 2009. And then a few years before that, about 3 years before that, they spent a whole lot more money to redo the Champions Course at Weeks Park because it was in pretty bad shape and it needed some help. So what we wanted to find out was how those investments were going to be able to be kept alive in the simple time of the Stage 3 drought emergency. And we found out a lot of really, really interesting things about it.
What do you think was the most surprising thing that you walked away from this?
I think the fact, you know, a lot of people, big misconception about Castaway Cove and that they use a lot of water, but they really, really don't. They're very, very good at not spending a lot of our precious commodity. They recycle the water. They're very smart when it comes to when they put water in pools when they have to, and they do a fantastic job of it and use very little water.
And you had said, surprisingly, relating it to like the hotels and stuff, you found some neat numbers, right?
Yeah, a medium-sized hotel would use more water daily than Castaway Cove does.
Wow.
So I mean, if you look at that place and you see huge pools and a lot of water everywhere and a lot of water spilling, over sides, but there are drains that catch that water and bring it back into their recycling pool. So it's really a very, very interesting way they do it.
And whenever we're talking about the golf course, you actually found like if they just let it die, then we would be pouring more money in later.
Yeah, they spent right around $4 million when they redid it. One of the big things they made when they used that money for was an irrigation system. They needed a new sprinkler system out there, and they haven't used it since February, which is amazing. But what they've done is they've hand watered areas in there, and they've done it to where, because the greens are so expensive. The greens are 6 figures pretty much for each one of them.
Kind of the last thing before we take a look at Chris's story is that you said we can take some of the tips that the golf course is doing and actually apply to our daily lives.
Yeah, they've done a really good job of basically hand watering. They have stayed well below the goal using their hand watering hoses and getting the spots that needed it, and then letting that water that once they need it run off into the areas that also want to stay green.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of great tips you can take away from this. And in case you missed it the first time, here's another look at drowning investments and really how these businesses, despite the drought, continue to thrive.
Let's start with Castaway Cove. In 2009, the City Council approved using $3.9 million of 4B sales tax money to purchase the water park. At that time, there was no indication there was a drought ahead, and the park has done nothing but make money every year since the city bought it.
We've averaged about $200,000 to $250,000 profit each year, revenues above expenditures. So from that standpoint, it really has been a success story.
The misconception with Castaway Cove is that it is a big water user. However, that is just not true. The park hasn't drained pools, and it recycles its water.
Just because it's a big swimming pool doesn't mean that we use water.
Park manager Steve Vaughn's been with Castaway Cove since it opened in 2004.
We use 1/300th of 1%. Actually, less than that is our water usage.
Vaughn says he's asked daily at the park how water is being conserved. City manager Darren Leiker said that 0.03% of 1% water usage is less than that of a lot of other businesses in the fall.
That's less than a medium-sized hotel. That's less than the Sonic restaurants in town use. So we're very efficient with the operation of the water park in terms of, we don't drain the pools, we recycle the water. We have complied with all the water restrictions and stages up to this point.
The park is actually doing so well that expansion could be in the near future to keep it fresh. That's something Vaughn says needs to keep happening.
When we do all the improvements, we keep the park clean. People enjoy coming here, making it fun for people. The park's going to survive. It's going to get bigger and bigger.
In 2006, Weeks Park underwent a $4 million renovation. Everything but the clubhouse was replaced, but now with Stage 4 looming, it's possible the most expensive part of any golf course could be in danger of drying up.
It's been very challenging.
Head professional at Weeks, Tony Dodge, is closely watching the greens.
The main thing that we've been concerned with has been taking care of our greens and tees as much as we can, but greens have been the main priority.
Weeks Park has an irrigation pond that right now is pretty full. It gets water directly from Lake Arrowhead. If and when Stage 4 kicks in, that water will stop flowing to the pond.
Under Stage 4, a current plan would call for the golf courses to not receive any potable water. We have some backup plans.
Those plans include making sure the irrigation pond is full before Stage 4 kicks in. Another is possibly drilling a water well. A third is to use any salvageable water from Holiday Creek, which runs right through the course. And a fourth option is to truck water in from the wastewater plant to keep the greens alive.
You don't want to lose those greens. The rest of it we can work with and recover and be fine, but the greens, that's a huge investment. That's probably $100,000 a green investment.
While money talks, Tony Dodge put the possible golf course problems in perspective.
But if people can't flush their toilets, I think they're not going to be really concerned about playing golf. So, I mean, it's just wait to see what happens with the sky.
Welcome back to Inside Texoma. Once again, we are taking a look at stories you only see on News Channel 6. Now, I got the chance to work on a story called the PI Project, or Phased In Project. Now, every year, teenagers right here in Texoma are thrown out on the streets all because they hit the age of 18. In the foster care system, it's called aging out. But I found hundreds of Texomans are actually going above and beyond to give these teens a forever home. It all started as a pastor's vision, but it has truly turned into something that even has state leaders in Texas on board. It hasn't officially kicked off, but the Phased In Project is already changing lives. Meet Joe Graham. He just turned 19, has a job, a clean room, and Texas fans, don't hold this against him, but he loves the Oklahoma Sooners and hopes to head off to college soon so he can become a game warden. A normal teen, right? But his story was one that was headed in a much different direction just 1 year ago.
My sister and my brother and them, they pretty much raised me before I went to the children's home, so I didn't really have that much of a father figure. And my mother had been murdered whenever I was about 10.
A heartbreaking childhood, and after spending 6 years in foster care, his time was up.
I got phased out and started spiraling out of control from there.
He was out on the streets selling watermelons and sweet potatoes and sleeping wherever he could. And he's not alone. As the man behind this vision, pastor of Evangel Temple, Kyle Bateman, explains.
Literally fall off the cliff of life. Half of them will end up homeless 18 months after their 18th birthday. About that same percentage end up addicted to drugs or alcohol. Many of the girls who are in foster care that phase out without anywhere to go, they end up pregnant.
And there are about 1,500 who do so every year. And that's just in Texas. Last year, there were 10 kids who phased out of the system right here in Wichita County.
There is that element of desperation out there of kids that really just need a place to go.
But that's where this property on Marine Street comes into play. The first $50,000 is paid for, raised in 1 week, by the way, making this dream closer to reality.
You do all you can, and God will do all that you can't. I am overwhelmed by the nationwide support that we have received, and also the local support that we've received from businesses, from the United States Air Force, from local community leaders, from other churches, from other people that just want to come on board and say, we're in this with you. It has literally been jaw-dropping.
Even Child Protective Services is behind this project, and it goes all the way up the chain.
Absolutely historic, where the state and the church are coming together with the same spirit of compassion, and they have been our greatest allies, and because they know this epidemic firsthand.
And an epidemic it is. As you heard, the numbers and stats are heartbreaking, even hard to believe. And as Randy Neff with CPS told me, one of the saddest statements is that prison systems of America try and gauge their future population on kids that phase out of foster care.
It's unfortunate because these are youth that are in care for no faults of their own.
But that's all about to change.
Through this project, through this phased in, we're going to change these statistics.
And the project is moving along, with new doors opening every day. The property that has 3 buildings for living quarters will eventually become the East Campus and hold 35 students, making it the largest in the state. But right now, the focus is on this building, which will hold the first 16 students. Either all boys or all girls, whatever the need is come November. But as Pastor Kyle Bateman explains, this vision doesn't end with just a roof over their head.
They've seen enough fake. They've been treated like cattle their whole lives. They've been herded in and herded out. They've been a number. They've been an amount of money some foster family may get a month, and to some of them, that's all they've been is a paycheck every month. We want to get rid of that.
Something Randy, who works so hard to keep families together, says he's happy to see.
They're going to have someone they can count on, they can call in the middle of the night when there's a crisis. They're going to have folks that are going to be there to celebrate their successes, and they're going to have families that are there that are able to help them during failures in life as well.
That love and guidance will come from house parents who already live on campus.
They know how to work with kids. They know how to problem solve. They know how to counsel. They know how to encourage. They have that gift of what we're looking for.
This is David and Twyla Daniels. The husband and wife team actually met while working at a children's home and said months before learning about this project, they started missing the kids and what they used to do.
There wasn't a hesitation. We knew we wanted to do it, and we were called to do it.
No matter what they've been through or what anyone has ever told them, they're valuable. There's a mission for them, and they're going to be successful at it.
They have already helped Joe achieve some of his dreams. And with their support, these two, who first met Joe working at a children's home, asked him to come and join them as a PI project student. And in just a few months, they've seen a major change.
I mean, he's more confident, a lot happier.
Joe recently passed his GED and even landed a job.
The day he finished his last GED test was also the same week that he had orientation at his first job. And he was so excited that I got home from work, and he said, "Miss Twyla, I'm so excited. I've got my GED done, and I've got a job, and the future looks good."
But Joe says more important than that,
now I have a father and mother figure.
and we're going to adopt every one of these kids. Maybe not in the legal term, but we're going to make them our own, and we're going to love them, and we're going to be there for them.
Now, the center will also include a one-stop shop that will house numerous agencies for these teenagers, and a second location is also in the works, so stay with News Channel 6 as we keep you up to date. And the target date, by the way, is set for November 15th. That's when they're going to move in, the first 16 students. I know a big day for everyone. We'll, of course, keep you up to date on that as well. Texoma, we want to say thanks for joining us this morning. We hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, we'll see you back here next Sunday morning for another look inside Texoma.